They thought Earth would mourn quietly, then the sky turned Terran. Part 1, The First Strike. The day the sky broke open, Yuna Kim was drinking coffee in Seoul. She was looking out the window of her small apartment, watching the morning sun rise over the city. The streets below were busy with people going to work. Children were walking to school. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. Then the clouds split apart. Thousands of ships appeared in the sky. They were massive, dark, and covered with strange symbols. They blocked out the sun and cast shadows over the entire city. Yuna dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but she did not hear it. She could only stare at the ships above. Across the world, people stopped what they were doing. In Tokyo, trains came to a halt as passengers pressed their faces against windows. In New York, people stood frozen in Times Square, looking up. In Paris, lovers on the bridges of the Seine River held each other and watched the impossible sight above them. Humanity was no longer alone. The message came 1 hour later. It was broadcast on every television, every radio, every phone, and every computer on Earth. A face appeared on the screens. It was not human. The creature had gray skin, 4 eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It called itself Overlord Krell, leader of the Velrath Dominion. "People of Earth," Krell said. His voice was cold and mechanical. "You are now part of the Velrath Dominion. We have conquered 200 species across this galaxy. None have successfully resisted. You have 24 hours to surrender your planet, your resources, and your population. If you do not surrender, you will be harvested." The message ended. The screens went black. In the underground command center beneath the mountains of Korea, Admiral TerranHFY watched the message with his generals. He was an old man with gray hair and hard eyes. He had fought in 3 wars during his lifetime. He had seen death many times, but he had never seen anything like this. "What do we do?" asked one of the young officers. His voice was shaking. Admiral TerranHFY was silent for a long moment. He looked at the faces around him. He saw fear in their eyes. He understood that fear, but he also knew something else. He knew what humans were capable of when they were pushed too far. "They want us to kneel," he said finally. His voice was calm and steady. "Let them come and try to make us." The world leaders tried to talk. They sent messages to the Velrath ships asking for peace talks. They offered to negotiate. They promised cooperation, but the Velrath did not respond. They were not interested in talking. They had given their demand. Now they were waiting. 12 hours passed. The deadline was getting closer. People around the world were panicking. Some tried to hide, some tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The Velrath ships surrounded the entire planet. Then 3 hours before the deadline, Overlord Krell lost his patience. The first beam of light came from the largest ship in the center of the fleet. It was bright blue and incredibly hot. It hit the city of Tokyo, and Tokyo was gone. In 1 second, 12 million people were dead. The entire city was turned to ash and smoke. Yuna Kim saw the flash of light from Seoul. She was in her car driving to the military base where she worked. She stopped the car and watched the distant glow in the sky. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing, but she did not cry. She did not scream. She just sat there and watched. More beams came. New York disappeared next, then Paris, then London, then Moscow. City after city was destroyed. The Velrath were not waiting for surrender anymore. They were showing humanity what happened to species that did not obey. By the end of the first day, 3 billion people were dead. The communication networks across Earth went dark. Satellites were destroyed. Power grids failed. The world went silent. The Velrath watched from their ships and saw a planet in ruins. Smoke rose from the destroyed cities. Fires burned across continents. There was no more resistance. There was no more defiance. Watcher Malix, the intelligence officer of the Velrath fleet, made his report to Overlord Krell. "The humans are broken," he said. "Their major cities are destroyed. Their governments have collapsed. Their military is scattered. They are mourning their dead. They will surrender by morning. Krell nodded slowly. He had seen this before. Every species reacted the same way. First they tried to fight, then they died, then the survivors gave up. Humans were no different. But Krell was wrong. Deep beneath the ruins of Seoul, in a bunker that the Velrath scanners could not detect, Captain Yuna Kim received a message. It was encrypted with codes that only the highest military officers knew. She read the message twice to make sure she understood it. Project Ragnarok was authorized. She walked down the long corridor of the bunker until she reached a heavy metal door. Behind that door was Dr. Seok-won, the greatest scientist in Korea. He was working at a computer, his fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. Around him were screens showing data and diagrams that Yuna did not understand. "Did you receive the order?" she asked. Dr. Seok-won stopped typing. He turned to look at her. His eyes were tired, but there was something else in them, something dangerous, something that looked like hope mixed with rage. "I received it," he said. "Is it ready?" Dr. Seok-won smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had been preparing for this moment his entire life. "It has been ready for 20 years," he said. "We always knew they would come, some species from the stars, some force that would try to take our planet. We prepared. We built weapons they cannot imagine. We created plans they will never expect." He stood up and walked to a window that looked out over a massive underground hangar. Inside the hangar were ships, hundreds of ships, human ships, built in secret, hidden from the world, hidden from the stars. "They think we are mourning," Dr. Seok-won said quietly. "They think we are crying and waiting to die, but they do not understand humans. They do not know our history. They do not know what we have done to each other for 10,000 years. He turned to Yuna Kim. His eyes were burning with cold fire. "We have spent our entire existence perfecting the art of war," he said. "Every generation, every century, we have learned to fight. We have learned to survive. We have learned to win. And now, for the first time in human history, we have a common enemy. Every nation, every people, every soldier on this planet, all of us, united against one target." Yuna Kim looked at the ships in the hangar. She thought about Tokyo. She thought about New York. She thought about the 3 billion people who had died today. She thought about her family, her friends, everyone she had lost. "What do we do now?" she asked. Dr. Seok-won put his hand on her shoulder. "Now," he said, "we wake up." Above the earth, the Velrath fleet celebrated their easy victory. They drank and laughed and talked about how weak humans were. They made plans to harvest the survivors and take the planet's resources. They did not see the lights turning on in bunkers across the world. They did not see the weapons being loaded. They did not see the soldiers putting on their armor. They did not see the ships preparing to launch. They thought Earth was mourning quietly. They were wrong. They thought Earth would mourn quietly, then the sky turned Terran. Part 2. Humanity remembers. 3 days had passed since the sky fell. 3 days since the Velrath burned the great cities of Earth. 3 days since 3 billion humans died in fire and light. The smoke still rose from the ruins. The fires still burned in the darkness. The world was broken and bleeding. But the world was not dead. In the underground bunker beneath Seoul, Dr. Seok-won stood before a room full of military leaders from every nation on Earth. Americans sat next to Russians. Chinese generals spoke with European commanders. Old enemies now shared the same table. Old hatreds were forgotten. There was only one enemy now, and it came from the stars. 50 years ago, Dr. Seok-won began, the governments of Earth detected strange signals from deep space. We realized we were not alone. We also realized that any species capable of traveling between stars would be far more advanced than us. So we prepared. He pressed a button and images appeared on the screen behind him. Underground factories, hidden shipyards on the dark side of the moon, secret bases in the asteroid belt, weapons that the public never knew existed. We built a second military, he continued. A secret military, ships that could travel faster than light, weapons that could destroy entire fleets, and we hid it all. We hid it from our own people. We hid it from any eyes that might be watching from above. Admiral TerranHFY spoke next. His voice was heavy with grief, but his eyes were sharp and focused. The Velrath think they destroyed our military capability when they burned our cities. They think our armies are scattered and our weapons are gone. They are wrong. They destroyed our public forces. Our real forces are still here, underground, in space, waiting. General D. Ho slammed his fist on the table. He was a large man with a scarred face. He had lost his wife and 2 children in the attack on Seoul. His eyes were red from crying, but his jaw was set with anger. My family is dead, he said. Millions of families are dead. Every person in this room has lost someone they love. The Velrath expect us to surrender. They expect us to beg for mercy. He stood up and looked around the room. I say we show them what human rage looks like. I say we make them pay for every life they took. I say we teach them that Earth does not beg. The room was silent. Then one by one the leaders began to nod. There would be no surrender. There would be no mercy. There would only be war. On the surface, the Velrath ground forces had begun to land. They expected to find survivors hiding in the ruins, waiting to be captured. Instead, they found something very different. Lieutenant Hannah Park was hiding in the rubble of a collapsed building in Seoul. She had 20 soldiers with her. They were dirty, tired, and hungry. They had been fighting for 3 days without rest, but they were not giving up. Contact, whispered one of her soldiers. 12 Velrath coming down the main street. Hannah looked through her scope. She could see the aliens walking slowly through the ruins. They were tall and muscular, covered in gray armor. They carried weapons that glowed with strange energy. They moved like conquerors, confident and unafraid. They did not know that humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They did not know that guerrilla warfare was a human specialty. They did not understand that every ruined building could hide death. Wait for my signal, Hannah whispered. The Velrath walked closer. They were looking around, searching for survivors to capture. One of them kicked aside a piece of rubble. Another one laughed at something. They were relaxed. They thought the fight was over. Now, Hannah said. 20 human soldiers opened fire at the same time. The first 5 Velrath died before they knew what was happening. The rest tried to take cover, but there was nowhere to hide. Bullets came from every direction. The humans had set a perfect trap. In 30 seconds, all 12 Velrath were dead. Hannah walked among the bodies. She picked up one of the alien weapons and studied it. It was advanced, but it was just a weapon. It could be understood. It could be used. It could be turned against its makers. Take everything, she ordered. Weapons, armor, communication devices, everything. We need to learn how they fight, and then we need to fight better. Across the world, similar scenes were playing out. In the ruins of London, resistance fighters ambushed a Velrath patrol. In the mountains of South America, soldiers used old tunnels to attack alien supply lines. In the forests of Russia, hunters who knew the land better than any invader picked off Velrath scouts one by one. The Velrath were not prepared for this. They had conquered 200 species, but those species had always surrendered after the first attack. They had never faced an enemy that refused to stop fighting. They had never faced an enemy that turned every street into a battlefield and every building into a fortress. Commander Tharros was starting to get frustrated. He reported to Overlord Krell from his cruiser above the planet. The humans are not surrendering, he said. They are attacking our ground forces everywhere. We have lost 600 soldiers in the past 2 days. Krell frowned. 600 soldiers was nothing compared to their total army, but it was still surprising. They should be broken, he said. We destroyed their cities. We killed billions of them. Why are they still fighting? I do not know, Tharos admitted. They fight without hope of winning. They fight even when death is certain. It is strange behavior. What the Velrath did not understand was that humans had always been like this. Throughout history, humans had fought against impossible odds. They had fought when logic said to surrender. They had fought when numbers said to give up. They had fought because giving up was simply not in their nature. Meanwhile, on the dark side of the moon, Admiral TerranHFY was preparing something much bigger than guerrilla attacks. He stood on the bridge of the flagship Iron Phoenix. Around him, hundreds of human warships were powering up their engines. These ships had been hidden here for decades, waiting for this moment. Their crews had trained in secret, preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Captain Yuna Kim walked onto the bridge. She had been given command of a squadron of fast attack ships. Her eyes were hard and cold. She had not slept since the attack. "All squadrons report ready," she said. Admiral TerranHFY nodded. He looked out the window at the fleet, so many ships, so many soldiers, all of them ready to die for their planet. "Do they know what we are about to do?" he asked. "They know," Yuna replied. "They know we are going to attack the Velrath fleet. They know many of us will die, and they do not care. They want revenge. They want to hurt the enemy that hurt us." TerranHFY closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about his daughter who had died in Tokyo. He thought about his wife who had died in the same attack. He thought about everyone he had lost. Then he opened his eyes and gave the order. "Send the message to Earth. Tell them to activate all remaining defenses. Tell them to launch the surface missiles on my signal, and tell them that help is coming." In her bunker, Lieutenant Hannah Park received the message. She gathered her soldiers and read it to them. "The fleet is coming," she said. "Admiral TerranHFY is leading 300 warships against the Velrath. When the battle begins, we attack on the ground. We hit every Velrath position we can find. We make them fight on two fronts at once." One of her young soldiers looked up at her. He could not have been more than 19 years old. "Can we really win?" he asked. Hannah looked at him. She thought about everything they had lost. She thought about everything they still had to lose, and she thought about what it would mean to give up. "I do not know if we can win," she said honestly, "but I know that we can hurt them. I know that we can make them bleed. I know that we can make them remember what it cost to attack Earth. And even if we all die, the humans who come after us will keep fighting. They will never stop. That is who we are. That is what we do." The young soldier nodded slowly. He gripped his weapon tighter. Far above the Earth, the Velrath fleet floated in peaceful darkness. They did not know that behind the moon, an army of human ships was preparing to attack. They did not know that on the ground below, millions of survivors were ready to rise up. They thought the war was over. They were about to learn that the war had not even begun. They thought Earth would mourn quietly, then the sky turned Terran. Part 3. The sky turns Terran. 1 week had passed since the Velrath came to Earth. 1 week since they burned the cities and killed the billions. 1 week since they declared victory and waited for humanity to surrender. Now, on the morning of the 8th day, everything was about to change. Admiral TerranHFY stood on the bridge of the Iron Phoenix. The ship was silent except for the soft sound of machines working. Around him, 300 human warships waited in the darkness behind the moon. They had been hiding here for days, watching, waiting, preparing. "Status report," he said. "All ships report ready, Admiral," replied his first officer. "Weapons are charged, engines are at full power, the crews are standing by." TerranHFY looked at the screen in front of him. It showed the Velrath fleet floating in orbit around Earth. There were over 2,000 enemy ships, almost 7 times more than the human fleet. The odds were terrible. The chances of survival were small. But Admiral TerranHFY had studied human history. He knew that humans had won battles against worse odds before. He knew that numbers were not everything. Strategy, courage, and the will to fight mattered more than counting ships. "Open a channel to all ships," he ordered. His face appeared on screens throughout the fleet. Thousands of soldiers stopped what they were doing and watched their admiral speak. "Today we go to war," THY said. His voice was calm and steady. "Many of us will die, maybe most of us, maybe all of us, but that does not matter. What matters is that we fight. What matters is that we show these invaders what humanity is made of. They came to our home, they killed our families, they burned our cities, now we make them pay." He paused for a moment. He looked directly into the camera. "When this battle is over, they will know the name of Earth. They will know that humans do not surrender. They will know that when you strike us, we strike back harder. And they will never forget what happened here today." He raised his hand. "All ships attack." The Iron Phoenix leaped forward, and 300 ships followed. They came around the edge of the moon like a wave of steel and fire. Their engines burned bright against the darkness of space. Their weapons powered up and glowed with deadly energy. The Velrath saw them coming. Alarms screamed across their fleet. Officers shouted orders. Ships turned to face the unexpected attack. Commander Tharos was on the bridge of his cruiser when the warning came. He stared at the screens in disbelief. "That is impossible," he said. "The humans have no fleet. Our scouts confirmed this." "Sir, we are detecting over 300 vessels," his officer replied. "They are attacking in formation. They are heavily armed." Tharos felt something he had never felt before. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was fear. Captain Yuna Kim led her squadron directly at the center of the enemy fleet. Her ship was small and fast, designed for quick strikes and rapid maneuvers. She pushed her engines to maximum speed. "All ships follow my lead," she broadcast on the open channel. "We hit them fast and hard. We do not slow down. We do not pull back. We make them regret ever coming to our planet." Her squadron crashed into the Velrath formation. Laser fire lit up the darkness. Missiles streaked through space. Ships exploded in bright balls of flame. The Velrath were trying to organize, but the humans were everywhere at once, attacking from all sides, hitting weak points, disappearing and then striking again. The human tactics confused the Velrath. Every species they had conquered before had fought in straight lines and predictable patterns. The humans did not fight like that. They were wild and unpredictable. Some ships would retreat while others charged forward. Groups would split apart and reform somewhere else. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Yuna Kim flew her ship between two massive Velrath destroyers. She launched all of her missiles at close range. Both destroyers took heavy damage. One of them lost power and began to drift. The other exploded in a shower of metal and fire. "That is for my mother," Yuna said quietly. Her mother had been in Tokyo. On the ground, Lieutenant Hannah Park watched the sky. She could see the flashes of light above the clouds. She could see the battle happening far above the earth, and she knew it was time. "All units," she said into her radio, "attack." Across the world, human resistance fighters rose up. They attacked every Velrath ground position they could find. They used guns, explosives, vehicles, and anything else they could get their hands on. They fought in the streets and in the buildings and in the tunnels underground. The Velrath ground forces were caught off guard. They had expected easy occupation duty. Instead, they found themselves fighting for their lives against an enemy that came from everywhere and nowhere. Hannah Park led her soldiers into a Velrath command center. The aliens inside were surprised and disorganized. The humans cut through them with fierce efficiency. In 10 minutes, the center was captured. Hannah picked up an alien communication device. She could hear the Velrath commanders screaming at each other. They were panicking. They did not understand what was happening. "Good," she said, "let them panic." In space, the battle raged on. Human ships were dying, but so were Velrath ships. The Iron Phoenix pushed through the enemy fleet, firing in all directions. Admiral TerranHFY stood at the center of the bridge, giving orders with calm precision. "Target their command ships," he ordered. "If we take out their leadership, their coordination will collapse." Captain Yuna Kim heard the order. She saw the flagship of Commander Tharos ahead of her. It was massive, covered with weapons and armor. It should have been impossible to attack, but Yuna did not believe in impossible. "All ships," she broadcast, "focus fire on the enemy command vessel, everything you have, now." 20 human ships turned and attacked Tharos's flagship together. Missiles struck its shields. Laser beams cut into its armor. The flagship tried to return fire, but the human ships were too fast, too close, too many. Commander Tharos screamed orders from his bridge. Kill them all." But it was too late. The human ships had already done their damage. The flagship was losing power. Fires burned inside its corridors. Explosions rocked its structure. Then Dr. Siok 1 activated Project Ragnarok. From a secret satellite hidden among Earth's space debris, a signal was sent. It carried a virus designed to attack Velrath computer systems. The virus spread through the enemy communication network like fire through dry grass. Ship after ship lost control of their weapons. Their engines failed. Their shields dropped. Overlord Krell watched from his personal cruiser as his fleet fell apart. Ships were floating dead in space. Others were crashing into each other. The human fleet was cutting through them like a blade through paper. "What is happening?" he demanded. "What have they done to us?" No one could answer him. The virus had destroyed their communications. Each ship was fighting alone, unable to coordinate with the others. For the first time in their history, the Velrath were retreating. Commander Tharos tried to escape, but his flagship was too damaged to move. Human boarding ships attached to his hull. Marines cut through the airlocks and poured inside. They moved through the corridors, killing every alien they found. The Velrath had never experienced hand-to-hand combat before. Their conquered species had always fought from a distance, but humans had been killing each other in close combat for thousands of years. They were experts at it. Tharos died on his own bridge, surrounded by human soldiers. He never understood what had happened. He never understood how a primitive species could defeat the Velrath Dominion. He died confused and afraid. Captain Yuna Kim stood on the captured bridge. She looked out the window at the battle. The Velrath fleet was broken. Ships were fleeing in all directions. Human ships chased them, destroying any that tried to escape. She picked up the commander's communication device and broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain Yuna Kim of Earth," she said. "This is what happens when you attack our home. This is what happens when you kill our people. Remember this day. Remember what we did to you. And tell your masters that if they ever threaten Earth again, we will come for them. We will find them, and we will destroy them." On the surface, Lieutenant Hannah Park looked up at the sky. The clouds were glowing orange and red with the light of burning ships. The Velrath ships that had seemed so terrifying were now falling like dying stars. She smiled for the first time in a week. Admiral TerranHFY watched as the last of the enemy retreated into hyperspace. The battle was over. Earth was free. The sky belonged to humanity once more. He closed his eyes and thought about his daughter. "We did it," he whispered. "We won." But he knew this was not the end. The Velrath would return. They would bring more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. This was just the beginning of a long war. But for now the sky was clear. For now Earth was safe. And the Velrath had learned that humanity did not mourn quietly. They had learned that when humanity was pushed, humanity pushed back. They had learned that the sky could turn Terran. They thought Earth would mourn quietly, then the sky turned Terran. Part 4, The Hunt begins. 1 month had passed since the Battle of Earth. The skies were clear now, but the scars remained. Where great cities once stood, there were only ruins and graves. The survivors were rebuilding, slowly and painfully. But they were also doing something else. They were preparing for revenge. The United Earth Council met in an underground chamber beneath what used to be Geneva. Leaders from every remaining nation sat around a massive table. Their faces were tired and worn. They had all lost people they loved. They had all seen things that would haunt them forever, but their eyes were not filled with despair. They were filled with something harder, something colder. "The Velrath have retreated to their territory," said Admiral TerranHFY. He stood at the head of the table, pointing at a holographic map of the galaxy. "They are regrouping, building more ships, training more soldiers. If we wait here, they will return stronger than before." "Then we do not wait," said General D. Ho. His voice was rough like gravel. "We take the fight to them." Some of the leaders shifted uncomfortably. "Attack the Velrath in their own space," asked one. "That is dangerous. We barely survived defending Earth. Can we really invade their territory?" Admiral TerranHFY turned to face them. "They came to our home. They killed our children. They burned our cities. And when they retreated, they thought they were safe. They thought we would stay here and hide. They thought we would be grateful just to survive." He leaned forward, placing both hands on the table. "I say we show them what human gratitude looks like." The vote was unanimous. No mercy, no negotiation. The Velrath would not be allowed to retreat and rebuild. Earth would bring the war to them. 3 weeks later, the human fleet jumped to the Velrath border world of Kethros. It was a massive planet with purple oceans and green clouds. Millions of Velrath civilians lived there, along with a significant military presence. It was supposed to be safe, deep inside Dominion territory. Captain Yuna Kim stood on the bridge of the Iron Phoenix. The ship had been repaired and upgraded after the first battle. It was faster now, stronger, more dangerous, just like its captain. "Broadcasting on all frequencies," she said. Her voice reached every corner of Kethros. It was transmitted to every ship in orbit and every city on the ground. "People of Kethros," she said, "1 month ago your fleet came to our world. They gave us a choice, surrender or die. They did not wait for an answer. They killed 3 billion of us in one day. Women, children, families. They burned our cities while we were still inside them." She paused for a moment. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were hard. "We did not come here for revenge. We came here to teach you something. When you attack Earth, Earth attacks back. When you hurt us, we hurt you worse. You showed us how this galaxy works. Now watch carefully while we show you what we learned." The battle for Kethros lasted 2 days. The Velrath forces fought hard, but they were outmatched. Human ships had been upgraded with technology recovered from captured enemy vessels. Human soldiers had studied Velrath tactics and learned to defeat them. And most importantly, humans fought with a fury that the Velrath had never seen before. Lieutenant Hannah Park led the ground assault. She had been promoted after the battle for Earth, but she still fought at the front, leading her soldiers through the streets of the capital city. The Velrath defenders were shocked by the speed and violence of the attack. "They surrender," one of her soldiers shouted, pointing at a group of Velrath soldiers throwing down their weapons. Hannah looked at them. She remembered the cities that burned. She remembered the children who died. She remembered the messages from the Velrath that said, "Submit or be harvested." "Take them prisoner," she said finally. "We are not like them. We do not kill those who surrender." The soldier looked surprised, but he nodded and followed orders. In 48 hours, Kethros fell. The Velrath military was destroyed. The planet was under human control, and for the first time in history, a species had invaded the Velrath dominion and won. News of the fall of Kethros spread across the galaxy faster than light. Other species, ones who had been conquered by the Velrath, heard the story with disbelief. A primitive species from an unknown world had defeated the Dominion. It seemed impossible, but the evidence was clear. Overlord Krell received the report in his throne room on the Velrath homeworld. His advisors watched nervously as he read the information. When he was finished, he sat in silence for a long time. How, he finally asked, how did this happen? The humans are unlike any species we have encountered before, said Watcher Malix. He had survived the first battle and had been studying humanity ever since. They do not fight like other species. They do not think like other species. And they do not fear like other species. Everyone fears death, Krell said. Yes, but the humans fear other things more. They fear failure. They fear losing the ones they love. They fear being conquered. These fears drive them to fight harder than any species should be able to fight. Krell stood up from his throne. He walked to the window and looked out at the sky. Somewhere out there, a human fleet was coming for him. Send a message to their fleet, he said. Request negotiations. Perhaps we can end this war before more blood is spilled. Admiral TerranHFY received the message on the bridge of the Iron Phoenix. He read it carefully, then handed it to Captain Yuna Kim. Overlord Krell wants to negotiate, he said. He says the war can end. He says there can be peace. Yuna read the message. Her face did not change. And what do you want to do? TerranHFY thought about his daughter. He thought about the billions who died. He thought about the terrified faces of people watching the sky fall. And he thought about what would happen if the Velrath were allowed to rebuild. Send this response, he said. His message was broadcast across the galaxy. You had your chance to talk. You chose fire. Now fire is all we speak. The human fleet continued its advance. Planet after planet fell. Velrath military bases were destroyed. Ships were captured or eliminated. The dominion that had ruled for thousands of years was crumbling. General D. Ho led the assault on a major shipyard. His forces destroyed hundreds of enemy vessels before they could launch. As he walked through the burning wreckage, he thought about his wife and children. This is for you, he whispered. On another world, Dr. Siak 1 studied captured Velrath technology. He was learning how their ships worked, how their weapons were built, how their society was organized. Knowledge was power, and he was gathering all the knowledge he could. They are not so different from us, he said to Captain Yuna Kim one evening. They built their empire through violence and fear. They conquered because they believed the strong should rule the weak. Sound familiar? Yuna nodded slowly. Human history is full of empires like that. Exactly, and every one of those empires fell eventually. The Velrath are just the latest in a long line of conquerors who thought they could not be defeated. He smiled slightly. They forgot something important. What is that? That there is always someone stronger waiting to rise. 3 months after the invasion of Earth, the human fleet reached the edge of Velrath core space. Ahead of them was the path to the enemy homeworld. Behind them was a trail of conquered planets and destroyed fleets. Admiral TerranHFY looked at the map of their progress. They had come so far so fast. The Velrath were in complete disarray. Their empire was falling apart. Victory was within reach. But he knew the hardest battle was still ahead. The Velrath homeworld would be heavily defended. The enemy would fight desperately to protect their capital. Many more humans would die before this war was over. He thought about the speech he would give to his soldiers. He thought about the words he would use to inspire them for the final battle. And he thought about what humanity would become after this war ended. They had been victims once. Now they were conquerors. The line between justice and revenge was getting thinner. The line between defense and destruction was disappearing. Were they still the heroes of this story, or were they becoming something else? He shook his head. Those questions would have to wait. Right now there was a war to win. Right now there was an enemy to defeat. Right now there was a message to send to the galaxy. Earth had come for the Velrath. And Earth would not stop until the job was finished. Lieutenant Hannah Park stood on the bridge beside him. She had fought in 100 battles over the past months. She had killed more enemies than she could count. She had lost friends and soldiers and pieces of herself. Are we doing the right thing? She asked quietly. Admiral THY looked at her. He saw the doubt in her eyes. He saw the exhaustion and the pain. And he saw the same question he had been asking himself. I do not know, he admitted. But I know that if we stop now, they will come back. They will rebuild. They will attack Earth again, and next time they might win. Hana nodded slowly. Then we keep going. Yes, THY said, we keep going. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading for the Velrath homeworld. The hunt was almost over. They thought Earth would mourn quietly. Then the sky turned Terran. Part 5, The New Order. 6 months had passed since the Velrath first came to Earth. 6 months of blood and fire and war. 6 months of loss and pain and rage. Now, at the end of all that fighting, the human fleet floated in the sky above the Velrath homeworld. Admiral THY looked at the planet below. It was beautiful in its own way. Blue and silver cities covered its surface. Massive ships floated in its orbit. Billions of Velrath lived there, waiting to see what would happen next. The fleet is in position, Captain Yuna Kim reported. All ships are ready. Ground forces are standing by. THY nodded slowly. He had thought about this moment for months. He had imagined it during the long nights when he could not sleep. He had planned it during the countless battles that brought them here, and now it was real. Open a channel to the planet, he said. His face appeared on screens across the Velrath homeworld. In their capital city, in their small villages, in their military bases and government buildings, everyone saw the human admiral looking down at them. People of the Velrath Dominion, he said. 6 months ago you came to Earth. You demanded our surrender, you killed billions of our people. You burned our cities and destroyed our homes. You thought we would submit. You thought we would break. You thought we would die quietly. He paused and looked directly into the camera. You were wrong. In the Velrath Palace, Overlord Krell watched the broadcast with his remaining advisors. His fleet was gone. His armies were defeated. His empire had crumbled in just 6 months. He had never imagined this was possible. No species had ever defeated the Velrath. No species had ever come this far. Admiral THY continued speaking. We have won this war. Your fleet is destroyed. Your conquered worlds are free. Your dominion is finished. Now you wait to see what we will do. Will we destroy your planet? Will we kill your people as you killed ours? Will we harvest you as you plan to harvest us? Every Velrath on the planet held their breath. Every human soldier waited for the order. The entire galaxy watched to see what humanity would choose. In the fleet, General D. Ho was ready for the command. He wanted destruction. He wanted the Velrath to suffer as Earth had suffered. He wanted revenge for his wife, for his children, for every human who had died in fire and light. Captain Yuna Kim stood beside Admiral THY. She had lost so much: her mother, her friends, her entire life before the war. Part of her wanted the Velrath to burn. Part of her wanted to watch their world turn to ash. But there was another part of her, a part that remembered what her mother taught her about being human, a part that knew the difference between justice and revenge, a part that wondered what they would become if they chose destruction. Admiral THY made his decision. We will not destroy you, he said. We are not like you. We did not come to the stars to conquer and kill. We came looking for knowledge. We came looking for friends. We came hopping to find others like us in the darkness. He leaned forward. But we also came ready to fight. And now you know what happens when you threaten Earth. Now you know the price of attacking our home. Your empire is over. Your fleet belongs to us. Your conquered worlds are free. And for the next 1,000 years, you will remember that you tried to make humanity kneel. In the palace, Overlord Krell closed his eyes. He knew what was coming next. Overlord Krell, Admiral THY said, come to my ship. Surrender yourself. Your people will be spared, but you will answer for what you did to Earth. There was a long silence. Then Krell stood up from his throne. He walked past his advisors, past his guards, past everything he had built. He walked to a shuttle that would take him to the human fleet. When he arrived on the Iron Phoenix, Admiral TerranHFY was waiting for him. Beside him stood Captain Yuna Kim, General D. Ho, Lieutenant Hana Park, and Dr. Siak One, the humans who had fought the hardest, the humans who had lost the most, the humans who had won the war. Krell stood before them. He was tall and powerful, but in that moment he seemed small. He looked at the faces of his enemies and saw no mercy, but he also saw no cruelty. "Do you have anything to say?" Admiral TerranHFY asked. Krell was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. "We thought you were weak. Every scan, every report, every analysis told us that humans were primitive and divided. We thought you would be easy to conquer." He shook his head slowly. "We did not understand. We did not see the strength that comes from your weakness. When your cities burned, you did not give up. When your people died, you did not surrender. When you should have broken, you became stronger. I have lived for 300 years. I have conquered 200 species, and I have never seen anything like humanity." He lowered his head. "You have won, I surrender." The image of Krell kneeling before Admiral TerranHFY was broadcast across the galaxy. Species that had been slaves for thousands of years saw their master brought low. Worlds that had never known freedom felt hope for the first time. The Velrath Dominion, the terror of the galaxy, was finished. And humanity stood in its place. Months later, after the treaties were signed and the prisoners were dealt with and the galaxy began to change, a memorial was built on Earth. It rose from the ruins of Sol, where so much blood had been spilled. The names of every human who died in the war were carved into its walls. 3 billion names. It took years to carve them all. At the center of the memorial was a simple message. They came for our surrender. They found our wrath. Lieutenant Hana Park, now promoted to general, stood before the memorial and spoke to the representatives of a dozen alien species. They had come to Earth to learn about humanity. They had come to understand the species that had changed the galaxy. "We wanted peace," she said. "We reached for the stars hopping to find friends. We dreamed of a future where all species worked together. But you sent conquerors. You sent killers. You sent those who saw our kindness as weakness." She looked at the alien faces watching her. "Now hear this. Earth does not forget. Earth does not forgive. And Earth does not mourn quietly. We will trade with you. We will work with you. We will build a better galaxy with you. But if any species ever threatens our home again, if any fleet ever enters our sky without permission, if any hand ever reaches for our children." Her eyes were hard as stone. "Then the sky will turn Terran once more." Years passed. The galaxy settled into a new order. The Velrath lived under human supervision, slowly rebuilding a society based on cooperation instead of conquest. The species they had enslaved began to build their own futures, and humanity took its place among the stars. One day, a group of alien diplomats came to Earth. They wanted to see the planet that had shaken the galaxy. They wanted to understand how a species that had been unknown 6 years ago was now the most feared and respected in the cosmos. Dr. Siak One, now old and gray, showed them around the rebuilt city of Sol. Children played in the parks. Families walked together on the streets. People laughed and talked and lived their lives as if nothing had happened. One diplomat turned to Dr. Siak One. "How did you rebuild so quickly?" he asked. "After such devastation, such loss, such pain, how did you recover?" Dr. Siak One smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. "We have had practice," he said. "Humans have always rebuilt, from plague and famine, from war and disaster, from every tragedy that tried to end us. We have been knocked down 1,000 times, and every time we have gotten back up. The Velrath were just another storm. A terrible storm, yes, but still just a storm." The diplomat looked around at the peaceful city. He thought about the terrible war. He thought about the fleet that had destroyed an empire. and he thought about the children playing in the park as if the galaxy had not almost burned. "And if another species threatens you," he asked, "if another fleet comes to your sky?" Dr. Siak, one's smile faded. He looked at the diplomat with eyes that had seen too much death. "Then the sky will turn Terran once more." The diplomat nodded slowly. He understood now. He understood that the peaceful streets and laughing children were not a sign of weakness. They were a sign of strength. Humanity had faced the worst and survived. They had been burned and broken and pushed to the edge of extinction, and they had come back stronger than ever. That night, as the diplomats returned to their ships, they looked back at the blue planet floating in the darkness. It seemed so small, so fragile, so ordinary. But they knew the truth now. Behind that peaceful sky was a species that would not break, a species that would not surrender, a species that had turned the galaxy upside down in 6 months. They thought Earth would mourn quietly. They were wrong, and the galaxy would never forget it.